Faith is misused by those who would twist Islam and its holy scriptures into a formula for hatred and destruction. Faith is misused by those who turn passages of the Christian and Jewish scriptures into instruments of oppression for women and for those whose sexuality is different. Faith is misused when a minority of Christians and Muslims claim their faith is the only true faith, and others must be converted to it against their will, by force if necessary. Faith is misused when the promise of humanism is distorted to exclude and deny all other faith stances. Yes, the fervor and enthusiasm which faith awakens can be used for ill as well as for good. But it can be and has been used for good, and that is what the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was doing. We could well learn from his example. He saw a nation divided along racial lines, a group of the oppressed and a group of the oppressors. Today, much of that overt oppression and discrimination which he saw have been dismantled, and a good deal of the credit goes to him and his work, and those who followed him, the work they did. The civil rights and voting rights legislation of the 1960s flowed directly from Dr. King's work, directly from his work. Affirmative action legislation of the 1970s also reflects the values and hopes and needs that he embodied. But now, 60 years later, our nation is even more complex than it was in 1963. Since then, we have recognized and begun to meet the needs and rights of women. Since then, we have established the right of marriage equality for all and have become more aware of the problems faced by those whose sexuality is different, although those things now are beginning to come into question. Since then, we have become a nation not of two races, one majority and one minority, but a nation of many races in which there will soon be no majority. Since then, we have elected an African-American president. Since then, we have become not a nation of a single faith with a small population of Jews off to the side, but a nation of many faiths. Since then, we have learned to our chagrin that despite all of this work, there remains a vast chasm of disparity between the status of blacks and whites in our country. We must learn to live together with one another. I think Dr. King, even though he was coming from a solid basis of Protestant Christian faith, would be teaching us that today, through his words, his leadership, and his life, he who'd been teaching this, had his life not been cut down by an assassin's bullet in 1968. Dr. King was an inspiration not only to those of his race and faith, but to all Americans, and indeed to all the world. Today was his birthday. Tomorrow we celebrate it as a national holiday. May we all take part in that celebration.